Hi, this is Des from the Music Marketing Academy, and in this video we're going to show you how to promote and market your music online. The great thing is I've got Jeff Ojeda from Phase Management, which I'm going to be interviewing today. Hi there, this is Des from the Music Marketing Academy, and today we're going to talk about the different ways to promote and market your music. And the great thing is I've got another guest with me. I say another guest, I've got Jeff Ojeda again from Phase Management, who are an artist management company, who I'm going to interview today. So Jeff, if you can give us a brief description of who you are, what you do, what the business is about, and then we can get into it if that's okay.
Right on. Thanks so much, Des. Yeah, my name's Jeff Ojeda. I'm an artist manager, and I've been in music for about 15 plus years or so. I'm based out of Vancouver, Canada, so a lot of my experience has been primarily, I guess, Canadian focused, but I've done a lot of different things with other artists across the pond and down in the States and whatnot. So yeah, I'm here to talk marketing. Let's do it.
Yeah, cool. So obviously in the last podcast that we did, we got a lot of good responses, a lot of people asking a lot of questions. So I thought it might be a good idea to talk about some of the things they were asking in this podcast, if that's okay with you. And one of the first things they were asking were about collaborations regarding promoting and marketing themselves. I mean, I suppose starting at the top, why should an artist collaborate and what are the advantages of that?
Yeah, good point. I think right now, especially now that people are, relatively on the same playing field as far as, being online and being relatively available, I find a lot of artists are willing to collaborate. And I think it's been a really positive thing because it just, first of all, I mean, it helps your creative development as an artist to be able to kind of share back and forth ideas, whether it's, music that you're writing for yourself or for them or for someone else. It just kind of helps you, exercise in different ways to make sure that you're training yourself, and maybe picking up, through osmosis, different tricks and ideas and stuff around songwriting.
Sure.
And as well, I'm sure you can touch on the incredible value that just sharing and promoting, across each other's audiences has.
Sure. I mean, I've put a note in here about helping with growth. Obviously, it doesn't really matter how far someone's actually been in their career, or whether they're new or if they're old in the career. Growth regarding collaborations, I think, would really help. Even it doesn't matter which stage they're at in their music career. Don't you think?
Absolutely, yeah, and I think there's a lot of value too in just stretching outside of your comfort zone and trying, writing with other people that might be in a different genre, a different space, predominantly than you would be. Because it's just it's almost like musical growth. It comes down to just having a wider palette for how you can approach your own art.
Yeah, sure. I've got notes on here about increased visibility as well. I don't know if you want to touch a little bit on that, if you don't mind.
Sure. Yeah. Are you talking more specifically YouTube?
No, completely up to you. I don't mind.
So I mean, actually, one good touch point on the cover side of things is that's a really great way to build a context point through other audiences that would be otherwise searching, a different song. And they might stumble upon yours, if they're, checking out a couple other artists that could be in the similar space, or yours might pop up as a recommended video. I think there's a lot of value in doing covers, and not only just doing covers, but making them, really different and making people kind of wowed at the fact that you're doing it in such a, with such a different arrangement, maybe different instruments or a whole different take on it. I think that audiences really like that. And,
Sure.
If you think about people wanting to, dance and sing and that sort of thing in a nightclub environment too, familiarity is important, and it's a great way to pull people back into your court.
Going back to the collaborations, have you worked with a lot of artists that have done collaborations with other artists at all? Have you had a lot of experience with that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think more than ever, getting from writing my own music way back in the day, and then starting to understand that most of the music that's written that's out there isn't, or the music that is successful or has some sort of, virality or if it ends up hitting on radio, usually has a couple writers on it. So I think early on I realized, the value in having that and having different people in the room as a sounding board and creating a sort of vibe between each other, that might manifest in a whole different, creation of a song that you might not have, otherwise been able to do yourself. So
Sure.
I think I realized pretty early on, the collaboration aspect has to be there, and it's better to be open to songwriting and sharing what you're doing with others than to, feel like everything and that you have it all under control, because you're going to just limit yourself that way.
Sure. And how do you recommend an independent artist going about getting a collaboration? I mean, I don't know if you get it a lot of times. Sometimes you're on social media, somebody will start following you and then automatically start asking you for things. And I always think it's a good idea to obviously build a relationship first before you start asking for anything. So maybe you can discuss a little bit about that if you don't mind.
Oh yes, yeah, that happens. That happens quite often. Yeah, and I mean that's a great, a thing to touch on in general. When you're building your network and you're reaching out to, whether it be industry people, playlisters, curators, anything, you have to realize that they're people, and that if you step in front of their door, knock on their door, and sell them something, they're more likely to go, "Whoa, what are you doing? My time is my thing," and just start a conversation first and ease into that, and maybe ask for an email and get to that point. And I think that's the same thing with songwriting as well. If you're reaching out to an artist, I think it's you're going to have a better chance at collaborating with someone if you know them or if you have some sort of rapport with them.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so that's where collaboration is just, it really is the name of the game. And within this industry, it's a relationships industry. So even with someone like myself, like being a manager, I always look at, different ways that I can work with people so that, I can continue learning and growing as well.
I'm with you. I'm with you. I mean, what I also suggest to a lot of artists is maybe set themselves a time, maybe give themselves either 2 months, 3 months to actually engage with the artist. No matter which platform it's on, I generally find that Twitter is quite a good platform to get to know somebody, jump into a conversation, and just don't think about collaboration initially. Just get to know the artist, have a conversation with them, and then maybe 2, 3 months later they can then ask for the collaboration. That
Yeah,
way at least they've built up some sort of relationship, and the artist who they're looking to get the collaboration from actually knows who they are.
absolutely. Yeah. And I think you're really great at this as well, just in general, from seeing, your Twitter conversation and stuff. It kind of goes the same way. You're there to exchange engagement with your community and find and pull people more in that are, looking for that kind of content and that kind of discussion. So yeah, I think that that's a huge thing, and a great point to touch on, and something that you could apply to almost every aspect of building your business, is just creating conversation. Unfortunately right now we can't be in person in different events and networking and stuff. But, I think more than anything too, is I've realized that a lot of people in the industry that say I wasn't able to, have a quick one-on-one meeting with otherwise, them being in New York and myself in Vancouver, it all of a sudden becomes a lot easier to be able to schedule, like a Zoom call or FaceTime or something with those people. So I think more than anything, the times are weird and we're not able to be in person, but the ability to just engage and be one-on-one with people, even if it's virtual, is hugely important.
Sure. And going to put you on the spot a little bit, really. Have any of your
Okay.
artists done any collaborations, and have you recommended that they do that?
Absolutely. Oh
Yeah.
yeah. I would say, yeah, for the most part, I try to pair. I mean, it just depends on the artist. There are some artists, like Madison, for example. She has songs that she's 100% writer on, and then there are other scenarios. If we're able to attract, a really powerful songwriter that has a lot of, credibility or experience, and the door's open to be able to facilitate something like that. Then
Sure.
yeah, that's something that we're definitely interested in. And
Okay.
I think that just comes from a bit of, songwriting and artist maturity as well, because, she's really young and she realized really quickly the value in collaborating like that. And I think,
Hmm.
if she wasn't as accessible and open in that capacity, to some of the things that we're presenting to her, then, I think she'd be, doing great just on her own. But we open the door to so much other possibility. And
Absolutely.
in pop specifically as well, the producers that actually have a hand in songwriting, that's a lot that's something that happens quite often. So when I'm approaching producers and she's discussing, with songwriters or producers, it's definitely something that kind of goes hand in hand a lot of the time.
Sure. And I suppose it's different sorts of collaborations as well. Like you just mentioned about the writing, but you're talking producers, even down to people doing the videography. That's the similar sort of collaboration as well, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Stylists,
I
publicists,
didn't
like
think of
even.
stylists actually. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. And publicists, like when you hire on any publicity team or someone that's going to be representing you, you want to have a conversation of how you want to be presented and the things that you believe in, and the different, according to what your plan is, how you want to kind of open up the different things that you're releasing. So I think just, like I said, relationships are pretty important, and I think there's a ton of value all around, and just having an open mind, and not being too precious about the things you do, and realize that as soon as you start opening the doors to other conversation and creative, sort of flux with other people, I think it's going to be a really good thing.
Absolutely. What I would also say as well, just in addition to what you just said, is if anybody does manage to get any collaborations, it's a good idea, especially if you're collaborating on one of their tracks, is to get or ask them to actually put your social details on their video. Because I see a lot of collaborations and the person that they're collaborating with doesn't put their social details on there. So it's very
Right.
hard for the independent new musician to actually get any traction from the collaboration, if that makes sense.
Totally. Yeah.
So
That's like a marketing 101. You got to make sure
yeah,
that everything gets traced back, right?
exactly. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. I mean, you don't need to write a book on it, but just maybe just 2 or 3 links to the social platforms would really, really help. And I think this is looking at it from over the last few weeks. I've studied a few of the channels, and a lot of people are missing that out. And also putting their name in the title as well. Silly little things like
Yeah.
that. A lot of people miss out as well. So
Yeah, that's really important to know, and even just like our discussion last time about metadata and setting up the technical and sort of administrative side, you want to have a spreadsheet for every single song, and you want to have all those details completely ironed out and in a place where you can reference them easily, because they all matter. You want to make sure that, say, I'm over here in Vancouver, but you over in the UK, if you hear Madison's song on the radio, I want that eventually to trickle back to her, right?
absolutely.
And that's why it's so important to make sure, do a good job of the metadata part.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
absolutely. And you mentioned Madison. How did she go about doing the collaboration? Was she actually in the same in the same studio as the person she was collaborating with, or were they in a different state, or how did that work?
Yeah, I mean, I think every song was kind of approached differently. Like her recent single, "Three's a Crowd," for an example, was written with 2 other people from out here in BC. One of them
Right,
is the producer that produced, Ryan Worsley. But her other track, "Best Part of Me," is an example too. She was actually down in Nashville and wrote with a couple writers down there.
right.
So it was just, I think every song and every environment is just kind of, circumstantial. If you have to travel to do a bit of a writing trip, that sometimes happens. Or if there are people that, say if you're, just a local punk rock band and there's someone that you really admire as far as, someone locally that you can kind of connect with, it doesn't have to be all this like big picture commercial sort of stuff. I guess is the takeaway. If you have, a circle of people and musicians and stuff that you have to access, I think that it starts there, and being able
Mm.
to really do that. And don't limit it. If it's 1 person or 2 people or 3 people in the room, that can have its advantages as well. Just make sure that as soon as you're done your session, you track everything so you have a reference to go back.
I'm with you. I'm with you. And again, plenty of promotion as well. I see a lot of artists put one video up on social media, and then that's it. They don't keep promoting it. And I notice again with Madison, she's got a new track out. There's a lot of promotion that goes on behind it. And obviously, if
Yeah.
both parties are working together, it's even stronger, isn't it?
It is, yeah. You always want everyone on your team to be working at their maximum efficiency. So,
Sure.
yeah, it's important to kind of, buckle down at what you're good at and do the best you can at it, because then everyone wins, right?
Absolutely. Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. All right, then. So if we move along, then I've got a topic here that says deconstructing marketing in music. Now, we talked about this before, and you mentioned something about a 3-part system. So I don't know if you could go into a little bit more detail about that, if you don't mind, Jeff.
Yeah, sure. So the initial system in the last video that we discussed was a 3-part release structure, and that's kind of it's nice to have it broken down into 3 parts, and it's just kind of easy to kind of go, 1, 2, 3, and remember, the different components that are important. So as far as releasing, just to quickly recap, the first month was about creating content and making sure that you had, all of the different things that you need, like single artwork, your promo photos, bio, that sort of thing. And then second month being your release technical aspects. And then third month being, pitching and getting the music out to as many outlets as you can. Sure. While you have everything sort of, buttoned up and ready to go. So the same sort of parallel that I actually like to use, and this is more in terms of understanding the relationship with trying to bring fans into your world and convert them, as a marketing term, but to actually create a one-on-one relationship with someone that's going to be lasting, right? You want these people, anyone that's going to be interested in your art, you want to bring them back, and you want them to feel, like, hey, I'm at home. This person's awesome. They play great music. They're about this, and it comes back to different interests. Like I was saying, like the lifestyle element. Do you skateboard? Do you do yoga? Are you a foodie? Do you love cooking? I love food. So it comes down to bringing those like human elements into play and making sure that you're creating, first of all, a community. Mm-hmm. And this is one side of the equation. I'm going to break this down into 3.
Yeah, sure.
In terms of what we're doing, so it comes down to one side of it is creating community based on the cultural sort of references that are a part of or ingrained in who you are, right? Mm-hmm. So like I was saying, yoga is one thing. People like to cook. People like to do pottery, gardening, hiking. Madison's huge into rescuing pit bulls. And that's something, yeah, and I think she's rescued 4 or something. But yeah, that's just something that's really cool and different that she resonates with. Kyle, my other artist, he builds vans and renovates them and stuff. So everyone's got kind of different things that they do in their day-to-day life, and so those subcultural sort of things that you relay with, and those people that would consume that sort of information. That's the community that you're building. It all comes down to culture and subcultural, connectivity with people. So that side of the equation, what does that actually mean? All right. So breaking that down, when you go, someone like for an example, like Madison, she loves rescuing pit bulls. She loves fall and Christmas and those sort of seasonal things. So that's something really like interesting about her, and those sort of personal sort of touch points, those are the things that matter the most.
Sure.
And so
can I stop you just there, just interrupt you if you don't mind? You mentioned about community, and it's something that I've touched on previously, and I always get a bit of a backlash on Twitter. People don't understand what I mean about building the community. So maybe you can just, before we go into the other points, maybe you can just dig a bit deeper into that, if you don't mind.
Yeah, sorry, absolutely. No, of course. No, and it actually kind of enriches that whole side of it too, is when you have people in your court and people that, whether they're as simple as Twitter followers or people, that you're following or that follow you, it's the process of engagement, picking things out within your feed that you resonate with, and then having starting a response on someone else's tweet, or creating, enough context within your tweets that are going to ask people questions or intrigue people to answer to yours. And I think that back and forth and that exchange of dialogue, really is what helps concrete people around the idea of, who you are and what you represent, especially as an artist. Artists are interesting. And I think that's kind of the cool part about it is pulling out all those different lifestyle things that help create conversation with people and help tether them back to who you are and what's important to you, right? So yeah, I mean, I'm sure you can add to it. You're doing an exceptional job on Twitter and building that whole platform. So you're no stranger to this.
No, not at all. I mean, the answer I normally give is a lot of people don't, or a lot of musicians don't understand the difference between posting content for their fans and posting content for themselves. They get confused of using their account as a personal account and a personal account only, and not really caring what their the word term you use, community, not really caring what they think. And I think
Yeah.
it needs to be a nice mix. There's nothing wrong with, obviously, Madison's interested in rescuing pit bulls, but she's not talking about it every single day. Do you understand what I mean? It needs to be, there needs to be a nice level of mix of showing content that your fans want to see, and also, and obviously telling your story at the same time. It's just finding that nice little balance, I suppose.
Yeah,
What I'd
absolutely.
recommend.
Totally. Yeah, that's so important. And the rule of thumb for me, and I mean, it's like, you know, it's nothing I made up. It's common marketing knowledge is that 80-20 split, right? 20% should be talking, or even less, talking about yourself. And then the rest of it should be more about other things that you're interested in, that generates that kind of, you know, the genuine conversation. So you have other things to talk about, and there's more, you know, and when you evaluate, say, your tweets, you know, it's really quick to get into, you know, if you're doing it right, to realize that most of the tweets are in response to people or helping other people, you know, with something that they might ask. Yeah, there's just so much value in showing up. Step up to the plate, you know, 15 minutes, put the phone down, or 5 minutes, or whatever it might be. You know, just keep checking in on the platforms and making sure that, you know, if you post a video and there are 10 comments, comment back to everyone. You know, They took the time for you, take the time for them.
Absolutely. And I think as well, just adding on to that, is just consistency. A lot of artists, we've all got lives, but I think it is worth turning up every day on social media if you can. I see a lot of them jump onto social media, and then, you know, 7-10 days later, then they'll jump back on. In this day and age, there's so much going on. I think you need to turn up every day, or at least every other day anyway, just to get some traction on social media.
Yeah, and it's just it's a reminder thing as well, right? You know, you want your face and your display photo and stuff to be coming up frequently, and the repetitive nature of, you know, posting stories, and you know, with TikTok, for an example too, it's you know, the rhythm of consistency is so important, right? And yeah, it's just so important to spend the time to plan, you know, and if it's not something, if you're posting a content piece, you know, plan that in ahead, so you're not, or ahead of time, so that you're not, you know, hustling to try to get something put out there, and you know, save yourself the time so that you can go and create and schedule in the social moments that you need throughout the day.
Sure, exactly. I mean, we're going to get a lot of backlash on that one. Again, it's something I talk about a lot. And a lot of people are talking about time. They haven't got the time to do this. So yeah, the only thing I would say is, if you can do a lot of your scheduling and a lot of your planning at the weekend, it then leaves you time to, you know, do other things in the week.
Yeah, can I touch on that timing thing really quick? So I think, because I think primarily a lot of the backlash we will get is that people are like, hey, there's only so much time in the day, and I feel like if I spend 4 hours a day on social media, it's going to go nowhere anyway. All right, I understand. But the truth is, you know, here's an easy way to kind of deconstruct it to make it work for you, is take the platforms that you're good at, you know, and choose the top 3, not 1. Don't forget about the rest, but prioritize your time on those top 3, right? And make sure that, you know, if you're going to allow yourself, everyone's different. You know, some people might work from home, some people might work 12-hour days and have just inherently a different capacity. So figure out the amount of time that you're willing to invest in this, because, you know, it's not your 9 to 5, it's what you do in the evening for most people, right? So take the time that you're willing to put into this, and make sure that you give, you know, say if it's half an hour, then put, you know, 10 minutes into Twitter, 20 minutes into this, and find something that's going to help you, you know, at least feel confident and good about checking that off the list for the day, so that you can move on to the next day. And that way, you know, it doesn't consume you, but you also aren't falling behind.
Sure.
And I think the biggest, and from what I've been seeing too, sorry, I got sirens.
That's okay. It's not a problem.
That wasn't planned. I hope nothing's burning. Yeah, I think that's, you know, a big part of it is people realize, or assuming that it's going to be one of those things you spend all evening on. That's not healthy, and that's not, you know, you can't expect to work 4 hours of overtime every single day on your job and expect not to get compensated. You know, that exchange isn't fair to you. So find that sort of, you know, what works for you, and create a schedule. You know, it's got to be something that's, you know, you check in and check out. You can leave your phone and go, you know, hang out with your family or loved ones or whatever
Yeah.
it might be, or your cat. I don't know.
Absolutely. So yeah, I mean, we could go on forever about creating content. Obviously, that was your first part of the 3-part system, wasn't it? Um,
Yeah. So
Sorry.
it was more community and culture that sits in that path for me. You know, and the reason I say culture is because if you're a punk rock band, you know, you might be more inclined to be into tattooing or skateboarding. I mean, I'm being very general and almost stereotypical, but or piercings, you know, but you might find yourself in that category. So that's what I mean by culture on this side of the equation. And with culture, you build community because people feel trust and companionship in a sense with the stuff that you're putting out. So the next sort of category is context.
Okay.
And I'm going to build it on the same sort of, or at least touch on the final one, which is content, because the relationship between the three is the most important thing to understand.
Okay.
So here you are with your content. So that's your music video, that's your single artwork, that's your song, everything that has a visual and audio sort of representation of yourself that you put out into the market and people consume, right? So how do you market to people? Well, you have this content, and then you have your communities and your cultural groups that you know respond to. So you have to bridge that with a context point. So content, context, community, or culture. And that context point are things like sharing frequently on Instagram or IGTV, Spotify, Apple Music, you know, putting your music out to the world, YouTube, like you said, you know, not forgetting that that is a context point, because ultimately you're taking your content, pulling people into your world and hoping to keep them in your community. Right. So that, I
Mhm.
mean, that's kind of a simple way to understand what you do in music
Sure.
marketing, and just understanding that from a very simple and sort of foundational side, it helps you understand, you know, what you're doing with your music. You know, that's a means to bring people in,
Mhm.
you know, and your video, that's people coming into your world. And then once you're there, or once you have them there, the repetition of content and serving things that, you know, those people want to consume, that's your job to make sure that wheel's turning, because otherwise you're going to lose them,
Sure.
right?
Sure. You mentioned the culture thing. We didn't really go into too much details about that. Maybe you could go into some more detail about that, because I think a lot of people have got an idea in their head what their look is, how they want to portray themselves, but it's not necessarily written down or structured.
Right. Yeah. No, that's a great point. And I think this just is, you know, it comes down to branding, that side of the equation more than anything, right? And like I was saying, like the punk rock association with like skateboarding or, you know, tattoos, piercings, that sort of thing. I mean, when you identify, you know, like for myself, I'm a music nerd, music manager. I love the business of music. That's one thing. You know, I have a dog named Riley. It's actually her 5th birthday today. So
Okay, happy
I,
birthday, Riley.
oh, thank you. I'll let her know. So yeah, I mean, there's that. I don't know. I love coffee. I love, you know, cooking. I'm gay. You know, there are certain things that I associate or kind of respond with, and those are the things that kind of construct my narrative as a person, you know, in a sense. And it's important to kind of go, and every artist is going to have their different thing. And if you're really into, say, vintage fashion, or those specific sort of niche things that make you unique, I think it's really important, you know, write down a list of those
Mm,
10 things. And from there go, okay, so now that I have these 10 things that are, you know, very specifically who I am,
mhm.
going and building a mood board of different visuals that help represent, you know,
Good
those
idea.
10 things. And then from there, you know, replicate that content. Find, you know, different filters. I mean, Instagram is great, and Snapchat as well too, where you can just find infinite filters nowadays to create the sort of look and aesthetic that you want. But it all kind of has to start with from within, you know, and that touches on culture as well. Because I mean, like, I don't know, like the cooking culture is so different. You know, if you're into plant-based food or keto, you know, there are all of these subcultures that kind of respond to that cultural group. So it's you know, it starts with an exercise of understanding, you know, what are your top 10 sort of, you know, cultures and subcultures that you respond to, and, you know, finding, I guess, your people in a sense. that are going to resonate with all those different interests that you have.
Sure. I suppose it's something that's going to happen naturally anyway, isn't it? I mean, if you are into certain things, you're gonna gravitate towards those things on social media anyway and talk about those things. And then people will just come across your profile, see that you're a musician, a producer, etc. And then I suppose you can build from there.
Yeah.
What I'd also add as well, we talked about community. I'll just touch on that once again. It's a good idea if you can either start building your own email list or even a private Facebook group. Social media is great, but to build a community that's not on a platform that you own is a really bad idea.
Yes.
So I think I know most of your artists have got their own little mailing lists and things, haven't they? So yeah, that's definitely something I would say. If you're going to build a community from your culture, your own personal culture, try and get them on a platform where you can actually build the community, which is either your email list or a private group.
Oh, totally. Yeah. And you know what's funny? I have a nice little anecdotal moment on that. Is back when I was starting out, I was doing a lot of branding in music and graphic design and MySpace pages and that sort of thing. And one of the managers I was working with gave me intel that MySpace was about to shut down. And that was, at that time, I would say 90% of my business. So I had to pivot from that. Thankfully, I had the intel, learn how to code websites, and then off I went and started
Wow.
specializing in that. And basically, you know, how to tell every one of my clients, I'm like, hey, MySpace is going down. And it legitimately did. And you know, people had, you know, 50 to 100,000 followers.
That's crazy.
And you lose that because you don't own it. And that could happen to any social platform. So learn, because that was a really hard moment for a lot of musicians.
Yeah, exactly. And to be honest with you, I'd say 99% of indies don't do that. They don't have an email list. They don't try and build a private community away from the platforms. And hopefully what we're talking about today will highlight that, and hopefully they will start doing that.
Yeah, and another one I want to touch on as well is platforms like Bands in Town and Songkick.
So Bands in Town.
Yeah, Bands in Town and Songkick. So those are two event listing platforms. So if you have a tour, and I mean, obviously this is the weirdest time to be talking about this because, I mean, hopefully we will get back to touring and doing shows legitimately. But, you know, those two platforms in themselves have such strong, you know, usership numbers. So if you are actively touring and you're building that, you know, it happens to build pretty quickly. And you'd be surprised, you know, up in the thousands pretty quickly. So, you know, those are two platforms I wouldn't ignore as well. And Songkick directly feeds its event listings to Spotify. So that's a nice way for, you know, for it to kind of come full circle. And if people are on your Spotify because they heard your song, they might realize that you're playing in their city next week. If COVID wasn't an issue.
So is this, I mean, obviously I've heard about these, but I haven't actually used them personally. Are they kind of like websites where fans will sign up and they get notified when certain things are happening with the artists that they're following? Is that how it works?
Yeah, exactly. And it's actually a well-integrated system where, say, if you have a show in Vancouver or London, you can hyper-focus and target all of your London fans and send out a message and let them know. And they get notified when, you know, when the show is actually being properly promoted or, you know, is active on their profile. And if you're following them, you know, that's how the relay sort of happens. But yeah, it becomes incredibly powerful, especially for artists that rely on touring quite a bit. So that's definitely a platform that, you know, I would recommend getting on and just slowly building it up.
Okay. And I don't suppose you know if they have like free plans or are they paid platforms? How do these?
They're not paid. They're all free, or both of them are free, rather.
Oh,
Yeah,
fantastic. Okay. So that's Bands in Town and Songkick.
that's right.
Yep. Okay. And are these platforms that you personally use with your artists?
Yes, definitely. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, Songkick is the exclusive platform to Spotify at the moment. So if you ever want your music displayed or your shows displayed on Spotify, you have to go through Songkick.
Oh, right.
Yeah, so that's definitely a standard. But Bands in Town it's directly linked to email marketing, so you can have a lot of fun with that one. And yeah, it's cool because you can do different exclusives or merch bundles or messages and stuff like that. It's definitely a very sort of interconnected platform for live concert lovers.
Brilliant. Okay, great. So just summarizing the three-part system again, if you don't mind.
Yeah, and I don't want to confuse people with this. It shouldn't be very, complicated. It's the act of what you're doing when you're trying to build fans and a
Mm,
fanship. Is you have music, and the point of the music is to go and put it out to people so you can bring them back into your world. And the reason why I break the exercise of music marketing down into those three C's and those three categories is because when you put your music out into the world and people are interested in it, it's your job to make sure that people stay in your community. And the way that you do that is understanding what your brand is. And like I was saying, all those different subculture sort of things. So creating community and dialogue based around the things that you believe in is what's going to create fan loyalty. So
right.
the act of putting context out and bringing people in with your music, you want to convert them, right? You want
Okay.
a lifelong fan that's loyal. So that comes down to what are you doing after you've brought them in? How do you continue serving them? Because fans want to consume, and they want to consume content that speaks based on something that they want to see, right?
Okay. Yeah. Cool. So did you want to talk about anything more on that, or did you want to go on to another topic? Completely up to you. Have you finished?
I'm good to move on if you'd like. I
Yeah,
hope that
sure.
all made sense.
Yeah, made sense. Yeah, I've made some notes. So yeah, the next thing we're going to talk about then is social versus media. So I think from what we were talking about before, we were on about things like frequency, quantity, quality, engagement. Maybe you want to touch on those if you don't mind.
Yeah, absolutely. So with social media, I think the easiest way to deconstruct, I guess, what we're doing and the purpose behind using it as your tool is really understanding the two sides of it. And I always break it down as simply as social and media. What are you doing to keep conversation and keep people active and engaged? And what are you doing on the other side to put content out that people are actually going to enjoy and comment on and like? And I saw you put out a post the other day about timing and understanding your sort of sweet spot for timing, and that is incredibly important. And on top of timing, looking at if you're doing a selfie versus a meme versus a full band pick, if you're rehearsing, whatever it might be, going through your feed and starting to pick out which ones work the best. And if you narrow down the timing variable and at least you have some consistency there, then you can start to understand the engagement levels of each of those pieces
Sure.
relative to the timing that you have, and start going, okay, well, selfies are my thing, so maybe I should put more of my effort into that.
Hmm.
And that's just on the content side. And going back to our idea of like an 80-20 split, I always say that the content is only really 20% of what you should be doing on socials, right? It's the other 80% that actually helps move the needle and helps you build and build and build over time.
Sure. So, I mean, you've split these up because obviously we normally hear the term social media, but you've split them up separately. So you're saying social versus media.
Yes, so it comes down to time and capacity again, but
Right.
it's an act of understanding. Don't spend so much time on creating really elaborate, crazy, content pieces. The act of lifestyle branding is really important. So overthinking happens to be something that a lot of artists fall on. And I think more than anything, capturing in the moment. Doing stories and things, like if you're writing or if you're doing things just day to day, those activities end up being a little bit more important because they help people engage and
Hmm.
build dialogue and retweet and that sort of thing. So yeah, I like to kind of draw the line in the sand, social and media, because each of those sides, together are what make up social media. But to deconstruct them and really realize, the value that each of them have, I think that's incredibly important because, like I said, the social side is everything.
Sure.
You can put content out, but if you have no engagement or discussion, you don't really have a community or any fans.
Yeah, absolutely. And I suppose as well, just add into that, it's understanding the context of the platforms as well. A lot of people don't realize that the things that you post on, for example, Twitter, are a little bit different to what you'll post on something like Instagram. I like to say that something like Twitter is a place where you network, you jump into conversations, and you basically you can show your personality by networking with people. Whereas on Instagram, it's more of a storytelling platform. I think you'd agree. I know you're quite prominent on the old stories. But yeah, just understanding the context of the social media platforms and then knowing what to post on there. I think if they have that sort of level of understanding, they'll do really well.
Absolutely. Yeah. Twitter's it's like it's a rhythm, you know. You have to kind of have some consistency and some frequency on that platform. And with Instagram, the way that I like to break it down is macro and micro. So what are the big picture things that kind of need to stick? So for an example, like your inline feed, like your normal feed and a post that you put up there, you might just do one or two a day, usually one a day. And your story would be sort of the macro or the micro things, sorry, that get you there. So drinking a coffee in the morning, writing a song, you know, starting up your car, going through a car wash, you know, or your dog, or whatever it might be. Any of those sort of micro components that make you a human being, you know, those should exist in stories. Whereas the or the macro things, I'm confusing it here. The macro
That's all right.
are the things that are bigger. So like your single came out, or you might have gotten, you know, a new tattoo, or something that might draw discussion on a more sort of impact based line of thinking, you know, sort of macro things that are more important to your career, and different things that might help sort of I guess build your whole persona from the outside looking in.
Absolutely.
Whereas micros, you know, it goes away in 24 hours. If you spill your coffee, well, the fan tomorrow might not even see that.
Exactly, exactly. And just touching on what we talked about previously about posting every day, I think if we talk about Instagram, it's not so important to post on the main platform each day, but the story side of it, I think, is really important to post on every day. I don't know if you agree with that.
Fully
Um,
agree.
so
Yeah.
yeah, so just a normal post, maybe you can even get away with once a week if you really wanted to. But stories, if you can go on there daily, that would really help your Instagram account.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the inline feed thing has its own strategy as well. I mean, I do agree that in most cases it's okay to skip, you know, 2 or 3 days to post something.
So
But
inline feed, I know what you mean. Inline feed, you're on about just the normal feed that when somebody's scrolling
yes,
through their phone on Instagram, yeah?
that's right. Yeah,
Okay.
just like posting a photo, any the post that you do that isn't a story, you know, your main
Okay.
feed post. So yeah, that's an easy way to put it. Um,
Okay.
yeah, and I think there's a rhythm to that as well, because I mean, if you say you're releasing a single and you're about to spend, you know, do a bit of a social marketing campaign, and you know that you're going to spend, say, $500 or pounds or whatever it might be on the next 4 weeks because you're putting out a single and that's what you're doing. Okay, well, you need to understand that without the repetition of getting the algorithm engaged, if you don't create a process where engagement is going to increase, you're not going to have enough of an open window to really do a great job of that campaign. So while I do agree that it's important not to oversaturate it, I think there's a process in understanding that sort of wave
I'm with
and the
you. Yeah.
flow according to, you know, the engagement that you're going to need at specific times in order to make, you know, your money go as far as possible.
Sure. And what I'd also recommend, just adding to that, is using all of the tools available, or as many of the tools available. So things like the quizzes, the polls, asking questions, that sort of thing. It all helps.
Yes.
You mentioned algorithm before, but all of those things, getting people engaged in your story, really helps the algorithm, and it shows your story to more of your followers.
Yeah, definitely. And it's just as easy as thinking of, you know, the platformers have them there for a reason. Like even Snapchat has a lot of them as well, but they're there for a reason and they want you to engage. So if you think about it this way, and if you only post photos on your story, you only are creating one laneway that you're feeding information back to the algorithm, right? If you're using 20 different buttons and GIFs and you know, all sorts of things, and it's really rich, then you know, you might have 20 other things that are feeding information back to that algorithm and helping keep that sort of, you know, you want to, it's like a popularity contest. You want to keep as much happening in your court at that time, because the second that you drop off, the numbers start to dip, right? And then you have to work your way back up to get there.
Sure. And is this, I've got a feeling that you don't really get too involved in your own artists' social media campaigns regarding that. It's kind of like leaving it up to them. Is that how it works with you?
I'm actually pretty involved with
Oh,
mine. You
you are?
know,
Okay.
It's not necessarily like I like to help guide and sort of, advise in terms of how to deliver the content and what sort of content is necessary. And I work with them on creating a content schedule, like I was, saying, with release setups and stuff. So yeah, I am pretty involved. And, and it just comes down to having that experience with running so many different campaigns through the years and, being a part of other campaigns that have been making, more than $20 million a year. It's imperative to have an understanding of what you're doing there.
Sure.
Because otherwise, people just go and do exposure campaigns and blow their money and get, 5% return or less. And, with social media and understanding advertising, you need to know what to look for and what steps make the most sense and how to carry that out.
Mm-hmm.
And that's honestly kind of a label secret. And working with so many labels that have conducted these campaigns too is just, asking the questions. So make sure that before you spend the money, you're doing the research. And because Facebook and Instagram like to eat up money, it's like a slot machine.
Mm. That's fair enough. So you mentioned engagement, and a lot of, again, it's something I always say on Twitter: make sure you engage, make sure you engage. And people always say to me, what do you mean engage? Now, obviously, on Twitter and on Instagram, it's going to be slightly different. But my recommendation on Twitter is to jump into conversations, because you can do that. Whereas on Instagram, it's a little bit different. I don't know how you felt, your experience. So maybe you can just discuss a little bit more about that, how your artists do that, engage on social media as part of the social versus media.
Yeah, so relevant. Every platform is different, like you said, and understanding that Instagram can be a personal space for a lot of people is really important. If you're if you're gonna DM someone and ask them for their time, it's probably not the first thing you want to say to them. But Twitter, for an example, like the analogy that I like to use is, like, imagine you're going on a first date and you're sitting down at a restaurant with someone, or you're at a pub and you're striking conversation. It's in a sense the same thing.
Mm.
Or if you're responding to someone else's remark, that's the same thing too. It creates a feedback circle between you and that other person. So yeah, it just comes to putting yourself out there a little bit. And,
Sure.
I think the beauty of Twitter is that if people are intrinsically shy or they're not extroverts, it gives you the time to edit yourself so that you can craft something that might be interesting.
Yeah,
And even if
absolutely.
it isn't interesting, if it's just a hello or like, yeah, I agree with that, whatever it might be, to kind of, create that feedback circle, that's super important.
Absolutely. Yeah. So one of the things I get a lot on Twitter is nobody's engaging with me. I'm not getting any engagement. But what they don't understand is, or what a lot of musicians don't understand is, you physically have to go out and engage yourself in order to get engagement back. It doesn't just, you don't just post something and you get lots of people commenting. You physically have to, either on your phone or on your desktop, actually go out and actually start engaging with people in order to get some sort of engagement back.
Absolutely. You know what? You don't get paid if you don't show up to go to work.
Absolutely. That's a good
Right?
analogy. Yeah, it's true. It's so true.
It's just it's the same exchange. You gotta put the time in, the effort in. And again, the time thing comes down to, it's not about quantity, it's about quality. And if you only have so much time available, then make sure that the engagement that you're doing isn't sitting there and typing 30 tweets out that have, no photos or no questions, or not specifically addressed to anyone. If you're just rapid firing tweets, that's on your own time. That's not really helping you much, right? So I think, it's just making sure that you're thinking smart, and the time that you have available is on the quality of the material and content and discussion that you're bringing to the table.
Exactly. Yeah. And I would say another little tip for artists is to actually converse with a lot of their peers. So if you've got 10 artists that are in the same genre of music as you, follow them and jump into the conversations as much as you can, because their fans will become your fans. That's how I look at it.
Yeah, and if there's a local band that's doing well in your area and you love one of their songs and your band is a big fan, but you haven't been able to reach out to them or get a response from them, cover their song and then send it to
Good
them,
idea. Good
right?
idea.
Just create that invitation as a means to come back into your world. And it's a context piece, again, going back to that. Serve them context, and they might come back, you know,
Absolutely.
and be able to, you know, generate conversation or tweet about you publicly. Yeah, I think there's so much value in just understanding, you know, we're all interconnected somehow. So it's, you know, important to create that conversation one way or another.
That's fine then. So, all right then, is there anything else that you wanted to discuss then in this part of the actual podcast?
I think we've covered quite a bit. I
Yeah.
like the idea of us, yeah, and I like the idea of us digging through, you know, all of the different, or many of the different sort of social platforms and what the expectation is for every artist. And, you know, really understanding that this is a measure of, first of all, understanding what your capacity is, understanding who you are, and, you know, like I was saying, writing a list of all the things that make you you, and trying to create content and conversation around those things that are special to you. And I think that once you start pulling people in with your music, you know, you're gonna create a nice sort of sense of community of friends and people that respond to all the things that you love and that make you unique as an artist. So I think that's, you know, first of all, that's the most important thing. There are a lot of people doing music out there, but not, you know, no one is as, you know, the same as you. So really understand who that is and what you believe in, and put that out into the world and create some, you know, genuine conversation around it.
Absolutely. And I would also say as well, if you have genuine fans, they will be interested in whatever you're posting. So be you, I would say. A lot of people think
Yeah.
that's a negative, but I think it's a massive positive, because no one else can be you. So
Yes,
be yourself. Yeah.
totally.
That sounds
And make
cliche, I
sure
know, but it's so true.
it is so true. And there are artists that I follow as well that are really, you know, they focus a lot on pandering to a platform rather than actually focusing on what makes them different. You know, just because you post 10 selfies in your story, it kind of, without any context, it's like, what are you doing, you
Yeah.
know? And if you're overdressing, or if you're acting a specific way to try to get a reaction out of people, well, your fans are gonna, you know, they're not stupid, so don't try to fool them, you know. They're
Yeah.
gonna figure out that it's not genuinely you, and they're just, you know, not gonna get interested. So make sure, yeah, you're totally right, Des, make sure it completely speaks to who you are and it's authentic coming out.
Exactly, exactly. Well, look, Jeff, thank you very much for coming on this podcast with me. I really appreciate it. Where can people find you?
Awesome. Yeah, not a problem. Thanks for having me. You can find me across social media on either Phase MGMT or Phase Music MGMT. On Instagram, on Phase Music MGMT, and Twitter as well, I think.
Okay.
But yeah, phasemgmt.com, and find me on Instagram at Jeff Ojeda, Ojeda.
Fantastic. Well, once again, thank you so much. We'll have to do this again. Hopefully, we'll at some point we'll get some more guests on and we can have some more discussions as well. That'd be great.
Yeah, that sounds fun. Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you very much, Jeff. Appreciate that.
Cheers.
I really hope you enjoyed this video, and if you haven't done so already, please subscribe and hit the bell notification so you don't miss anything. And if you missed the first video with me and Jeff, I'll leave a link somewhere on this screen so you can have a look at that as well. I'll see you in the next video.